Okay, perfect. So welcome to this new, let's say, interview. The topic is again relocation, but now after last week we were in North America. This week we are traveling to South America and particularly to Chile. And I'm very happy also because like I was there, even if only, as I mentioned, in the South, but I love the country. It's on my like list to come back and see and travel all over the country. So welcome, Juan, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me here, Viviana. I'm very happy that you invited me and have the chance to talk with you about these interesting subjects. And I'm also happy that you visited Chile. You visited also one of the most beautiful places, which is the south. So, but you have to go back again and now visit the north, which is totally different, but also very interesting.
Exactly, yeah, for sure. So thank you very much for being here. And as we have done through all, let's say, this month about relocation, we are meeting actually intercultural trainer and expert that can support people when relocate to a different country. So can you tell us about a little bit about you, what you do, and in your work?
Sure. I founded a company called Hub of Organizational Effectiveness. We are a team of 19 senior consultants and coaches that are looking to help leaders and organizations to basically meet their goals, but from that if they meet their goals, what they also do is be able to take care of the interests of all kinds of stakeholders, be it not only investors or owners, but also managers, the staff and their families, the market, meaning by market suppliers and especially clients, but also the community, including within the community also the planet. So we work with the companies to help them grow, but in a sustainable way.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, that's great. And this is not our first conversation. I think we found many aspects that we work together and we think the same. So one is the work that you do also, you know, I call my company Global Mindset Development. So this work actually on the mindset and what they are called also the soft skills. And the other is, yeah, let's work effectively. Let's work effectively across cultures, but also we want to put everything together. So people, profit, and planet, as we say, like the three P for sustainability.
Exactly. Yeah. And in that sense, we have developed also a cultural integration program aimed at bridging the gap between different cultures when they work in the same company. For example, expats that come to work in a multinational company in Chile and that think that it's just a copy-paste kind of thing, and it is not. They need to understand the local culture, and people in the local staff also needs to understand the expat culture and both need to find value in the other cultures. So that's why we call it bridging a gap. And we have developed a program also to support companies in that endeavor.
Exactly. And you already introduced my next question, because Chile is for Europe is a okay. Yeah, I think you froze for a moment, but maybe now you're back. We've lost you. Okay, now you're back.
Am I back?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
So can you tell us a little bit about like Chile, the country? So maybe some like cultural aspect that is important to have in mind, and also something about the region and maybe the main differences, because again, like South America is like a continent or half a continent, and it's not the same to be relocated to Chile or any other country there.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, even if we do all speak the same language, this is as far as it goes in terms of similarities.
Yeah.
For one thing, Chile is the southernmost country in the world, and that also has to do with migration. Yeah. So while many Europeans came to Mexico, to Colombia, to Peru, also lured by gold and and richness and all that. I'm talking about 1600, 1700 and so forth. The people that got to Chile, which is a country without major gold mines or anything like that, were the ones that, so to say, the leftovers, or the ones that wouldn't be able to get to make it in Peru, in Colombia, or Mexico. So this kind of migration was the one that actually came to settle down, not to go back to the metropolis, be it Spain, Portugal, or whatever in those years. Yeah. So that means that, and then take also into consideration, Chile is a very long and narrow country, 200 kilometers wide in average. So you can be in 2 hours from the beach up in the mountains skiing in just 2 hours.
In very high mountains, so we're not
very high mountains. Yeah. So in a way, and in the North Chile, in the northern part of Chile, you have a desert, and in the very deep south, it's like being in Norway with fjords, a lot of snow, very cold, etc. So Chile is a country that is geographically very isolated. Isolated by the mountains, isolated by big ocean, isolated by this desert and fjords. So that has made Chile a kind of an island within South America.
True.
And that, and this you can see in the way people behave in Chile. So whereas Argentinians, for example, they have long extensions of land and have therefore a lot of space to do things and to broaden and to expand themselves, Chile is very narrow. So we have historically had this feeling of being isolated, and therefore we try to imitate those that are far away. Instead of being like Argentinians, Peruvians, Bolivians, etc., Chileans want to be like the Germans, like the English people, like the French, etc. And that has made us a little bit different from the rest of South America.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because sometimes when I also do training, like an intercultural trainer, I mention to like the clients or the participant that when you work across cultures, you also need to know a little bit about the history and also the geography, because they have an impact on the culture of the country. And you made it so clear, because you can be an island also without being an island in the case of Chile. And also something that like impressed me, and I was traveling for South America, so I was also in other countries, is also, and I think this is also linked, so everything needs to be very organized. So my experience in Chile was that everything was organized, and I think that is also the case. So the geography force you also to be well organized, because like you don't have all the space, as you mentioned, all the space to try different things. So you have to do that and also be maybe linked to the Germans or inspired by, or wanna be like the Germans or the Swiss.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. One of the main traits of Chile is that it tends to be, compared to the rest of South America, a very well-organized country. And that's independent if your government is right-wing, left-wing, it doesn't matter. Organization and structure is very important. And the other thing that people also value a lot, more than maybe what they should, is laws and regulations. And let me explain what I meant by that. I mean, we obviously all have to abide by the law. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that there is a belief in Chile that law makes behavior. And in fact, it's the other way around. Behavior creates law. But the need to be organized, the need to be able to function in some way in this narrow country has made people be very conscientious about law and regulation. And add to that, that obviously the main influence, leaving the native cultures aside for a moment, the main influence were the Spaniards, but not the richest and the more refined Spaniards, the ones that were more, almost literally left out of, were put out of jail, sent to South America so that there wouldn't be any kind of disturbance in Spain. And those were the ones, a part of them were the ones that got to Chile. So you needed also a strong law and regulation in order to be able to sustain I would say the day-to-day living, and that has forced Chile to be very organized.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And like, you're working with different countries, and you have also traveled a lot. Can you tell us, this is something that is always interesting, I think, for our audience to know, that also you can be like the most intercultural expert, but still there are maybe some cultural shock that you have experienced or you weren't prepared. So I know also you work with people from different countries, and can you tell me, or can you tell us like one experience of cultural shock that you had?
Excuse me, Viviana, I have some connection problems. I couldn't hear you well. Give me just 1 second. I'm gonna try to connect to another source. Just for a second, please.
Don't worry.
Sorry about that, but well, these are the risks of going live, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we cannot do like cut and paste and editing the video. But being live, we can also take some questions from the audience. So if you have any question or you're curious, feel free to like type something and ask any question in the comments, so I can ask Juan to answer that.
For some reason, can you hear me well now?
Yes.
Okay. I for some reason couldn't connect to the other source, but let's cross our fingers and see if we can go
yeah,
on.
sometimes
you were,
but we're still hearing you.
Yeah, you were making me a question.
Yeah, it was about cultural.
So I can.
Yeah, sorry, it was about cultural shock. Had you ever experienced any cultural shock while traveling or living in another country or working with someone from another country?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, I experienced that cultural shock early on. My family is a family from immigrants. Half of my family comes from Germany, and another quarter comes from Denmark. So I experienced multiculturality very early on in my life. I even went to the German school in Santiago, so I grew up learning 3 languages, Spanish, German, and English. And I was taught very early on that in order to be able to speak a language, you have to think in that language, and therefore you also have to understand the respective culture. And that's what I did. My first experience living abroad or working abroad was when I did my master's study in the United States. And you know what? My cultural shock was not getting to the States. My cultural shock was the other way around, going back to Chile. In a way, and I think this happens to a lot of families that are multicultural, that since you have been exposed to a lot of, very much to other cultures during your upbringing, it doesn't sound so strange for you when you go to this other culture and experience it firsthand. But then when you come back, you realize that you were living in kind of a bubble. I went to German school. I had friends that spoke German. I was part of what's called here the Chilean German community. So in a sense, I was in a bubble. But Chile is not that, and no country is like that. Actually, all countries are kind of a melting pot where you have a lot of different subcultures interacting and creating what is afterwards this quote unquote national culture. And I realized that when I got back to Chile after doing my master's study. And then afterwards, working with for multinational corporations, I had the same experience as well. It was for me easier to interact with corporate, being corporate, for example, in the United States, than interacting afterwards with local people.
Yeah, that's so true, because sometimes, again, yeah, when you go abroad and then you come back, it's we say this, we mentioned this in intercultural management, that then you have new lens, and then you see the reality through this new lens. And so then you're going also to find something that maybe before you didn't see, because you were not also paying attention to, let's say, the diversity around you. And that's so true. And I can relate totally. And in fact, when I work with companies, like local companies, I want to go abroad, I also suggest them, let's start local, because actually you already have a lot of migrant communities or people from different countries around you. So you can even test your product with them and then see if that works. Then you can go to China or any other place. But understanding that there is this diversity around you is for sure the first phase, the first step.
What you're saying is so true. I think I told you last time when we had our first conversation, there is a case of a Chilean supermarket chain that also established in Argentina, neighboring country. You would say, no problem at all. It was a total failure. And the reason because it was a total failure is because they thought that it was just a copy-paste. Whatever works in Chile will work in our neighboring country, Argentina, and it didn't. And it had to do even with very, if you would say, maybe trivial details, but those make a difference. I mean, the devil is in the details, as they say. For example, the way the cuts that you use in meat in Argentina and Chile are different and are called different. But they use the same meat cuts, the same Chilean meat cuts in Argentina, and the Argentinians wouldn't know what they were buying, so they didn't. Or, for example, what was very common there, or is very common there, is that the tomato sauce is with the pastas, but in Chile, the tomato sauce is with the cans.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't find tomato sauce, so they wouldn't buy it. End result, they lasted, I think, something like a year and a half, and they had to leave Argentina.
Exactly. No, that's so true, because yeah, there are small differences, small trivial differences, but they can really make the difference. And sometimes another thing that I think you can really rely on, I think working across cultures, you also have to be a little bit less arrogant and work on your, let's say, humility, because, and I'm Italian, I work with Italians, and we think, oh, but it is a made in Italy product, so everyone wants a made in Italy product. That can be true, but you're made in Italy, maybe you have to adjust with some small things to adjust your communication, your marketing, the way you pack your product to the different culture. Then it's still a made in Italy, but then they will it the more because it's also make for their taste or the way that they would buy it.
Definitely. And this also relates very well to what the whole process of design thinking looks like. In what way? You should try early and lose also early. And for that, you need to prototype. So start whatever you want to do in an international market, start small.
Yeah.
And try it out, so that if it doesn't work,
you can still
work. It's not a big cost to you.
Exactly.
And what you said in that sense is so true. If you have people in your own country where you could try how this product would work in the home country, well, try it with them first.
Exactly. Good. Now you with the supermarket thing, you really made me travel to Chile, and I'm thinking also about everything that I had there. So that was, I think, also just this is really a small thing between, but also you have something that is in Mexico is called guacamole, but in Chile is another name, right? No, I don't remember.
Yeah, it's called palta in Chile.
Exactly, it's palta. Exactly.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's
And I think it's the only country in the world where it's called palta. I'm not quite sure about that, but there you go. I mean, it's the same language, Spanish.
Yeah.
And there's a funny thing. When I was studying in the States, obviously you get in touch with other Latin American students. And sometimes we would be talking about things and somebody would use a word everybody else wouldn't understand. So this person would have to translate into English. Oh, okay. And then they would everybody would say the word they were using for that exact thing. For example, peace. Peace are called 5 or 6 different ways, depending on what area of Latin America or Spain you're talking about.
That's super. Yeah, that's so interesting because yeah, sometimes people think it's only the language that you have to learn, but no, it's unfortunately not. It's not only the language. And so I'm asking you another question about the language, and then so we close this interview because last week I was in a meeting with some like Latin America people from Latin America living in Latin America but living also in Europe, and we had this like funny discussion about horita. So how many minutes or how many what the time about horita? I will be there in a horita. Because they say like in Mexico is something, in Chile is something else, in Spain can be something else.
Yeah, and in fact, you can, if you have a trained ear, you can easily recognize from which part of Latin America that person is coming from, depending on the words they use. Mm-hmm. There are some words that you tend to use a lot. For instance, in Chile, if you want to say right away, you say al tiro. Which would translate into as soon as the shot gets out. Mm-hmm. And it's the only place they say al tiro. But the same thing as ahorita in Mexico is al tiro in Chile. So, well, and obviously, if you use curse words, that's more typical. But yeah, you would see that. And you have to be careful. I remember once when I was visiting one of the operations in Peru, again, neighboring country, and I was visiting with the manager of health and safety. He is also a Chilean, and we were visiting, and we got to the desk of the secretary of the president of the operation in Arequipa. And he sees the picture of the secretary with her 2 daughters. And he says, oh, these are your regalonas, which is a kind of saying, these are the ones that you love a lot. Mm-hmm. But in Peru, that means something else. These are your little hookers.
Okay.
So you see,
kind of a cultural incident.
Fortunately enough for my colleague, she was already very knowledgeable about the Chilean expressions. So she didn't take it personally, and she just laughed and explained to him what he had just said. Mm. But if it's not the case, if you go maybe visit a client who has first experience with a Chilean, and you trying to be nice to the person, say, oh, so this picture is about your regalonas, well, then you're onto a very bad start.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, thank you so much. This was also very, very interesting. And again, it's not only the language, is the language in the different countries and the language and the cultures. So thank you very much for this. Now, before we close, as I'm asking to all the guests that we had, can you tell us like what you think are, let's say, the 3 tips or the most important things that people need to know when relocating or maybe coming with their company to, you can pick Chile or any other country or the region as you prefer. Mm-hmm.
Sure. Well, the first thing I would say is, and you mentioned it is you need to be humble. I mean, you might be the most successful multinational corporation in the world, but still you have to be humble enough to be able to discover the value of the local culture, even if that culture is different and seemingly even maybe opposed to some of the things that you want to do in that country. And I'm saying only seemingly, because in fact, you need to be able to discover more in depth what lies beneath that. Second thing is, don't forget your family. And that's something that we address in our cultural integration program. Expats come to a different country and the family comes with them. The expats have the project all set up and they work 9 to 5, 9 to 9, depending on the local uses. But the family stays at home without network, without necessarily understanding the culture, and therefore they need to be taken care of. And from very basic things like doing groceries. Where do I go to do groceries? What are the safe places in the city that I can go by myself and which are not? Every city in the world has safe places and unsafe places, etc. So, and obviously schooling, housing, etc., etc. How do you make friends in that country? And that varies from one country to the next one. You go to the Caribbean and people are friendly and their social distance is very small. But you come to Chile and the social distance widens. So you have to be careful. But on the other hand, in Chile, we all greet with a kiss. Men, women, I mean. So, well, but some Europeans that come to the country don't want to be kissed at the first time, even if it's on the cheek. So these are things that you need to understand and you need to be able to communicate. And the third thing I would say is that there is value in everybody. And therefore, take time to know your local staff. And to the local staff is the same way, the other way around. Take time to know your expats. And that means using how the saying goes, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. So always listen twice as much as you speak.
No, that's so true. I use actually that sentence in my courses because I think it's very, very true. And again, it's not only, as you mentioned, so it's not only that the cultural integration is for the one who relocate for work, is for the family, and is also for the team that will work with him. So it's actually the cultural integration is everyone needs to like integrate in the culture of the organization that then has its own culture also. And I know you also work on this. So thank you very much once again. I'm really happy that we managed to have this conversation. If you want to contact Juan, we will then put, let's say, the contact details in the comment and you can reach him, I think, like LinkedIn, Facebook, you are there. And thank you once again for being with us.
Thanks again for having me here. I enjoyed this conversation. Sorry for the connection inconveniences. And happy to interact with everybody here. So
exactly. No, I'm glad that, yeah, maybe that there was some delay, but we managed to go from the beginning to the end. So that's great.
Excellent.
Thank you again.
Have a nice evening, you, and a very good week.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.